So the other day, my wife asked me to help her with this small project around the house. Now, when she says small, I immediately know it's like when you see a toddler holding a hammer. Nothing good is gonna come from this. But I'm trying to be a good husband, so I said, sure, absolutely. I got this. Big mistake. Started with what she called simple organizing. Simple. That's a dangerous word. She hands me this stack of boxes and says, just move these to the other room. Easy, right? Except the boxes had like 50 years of accumulated random stuff. There were old receipts, shoes that I swear belonged in the Smithsonian, and something that looked like it could be alive. I pick up one box. It's heavier than a small car, and before I know it, dropped it, papers go everywhere, shoes fly, and I think I saw the mysterious alive thing crawl under the couch. Then she says, why don't you handle the kitchen? Now, the kitchen is my safe zone, or at least it used to be. I start washing dishes, which is fine, until I notice she didn't actually clean out the leftovers first. Smart. So now I'm holding a plate with some mystery meat on it, and it's sliding off like it's auditioning for an action movie. Drop it, and it hits the floor in slow motion. And of course, my wife is standing there, watching, smiling, not helping, just smiling. By this point, I realize maybe helping isn't my gift. Maybe my gift is, I don't know, sitting on the couch, but she has me cleaning the living room, folding laundry, dusting things I didn't even know could collect dust. Every time I think I'm done, she adds another little task. Oh, while you're at it, that's the line. That's the danger zone. That's when I start questioning my life choices. And here's the thing, she's calm. Calm! Like this is all normal. Like husbands secretly love dropping mystery meat on the floor and wrestling with boxes full of ancient junk. And me, I'm sweating, I'm apologizing to inanimate objects, I'm negotiating with socks. Socks do not negotiate, by the way. Then, as I'm finally catching my breath, she says, thanks for helping. Oh, can you take care of the garage next? And I just stand there, because that's when I realize maybe some things are better left undone. Maybe some offers of help are actually traps. And maybe, just maybe, tried helping my wife should come with a warning label. So it all started when my wife came up to me with that look. The one that says, I have a plan. It's going to involve you in ways you didn't sign up for. She asked me to help with this small project around the house. Now, when she says small, I immediately start recalculating my life choices because in her language, small is rarely small. It's the kind of small that ends up taking an entire afternoon, 3 emotional support snacks, maybe a call to the fire department. But being the optimistic husband, I said, of course, I'll help, thinking maybe this one time I could be competent and useful. That was the first trap. The project began with what she called organizing a few boxes. In reality, it was like opening a portal to the past. Each box contained layers of items that seemed to have been collected over decades. There were shoes I couldn't identify, paperwork that could probably qualify as historical documents, and one item that looked suspiciously alive. I wasn't ready to argue whether it was a bug or a lost pet. I picked up the first box, feeling confident, immediately realized the laws of physics didn't care about my confidence. The box was heavier than my entire self, a steam that morning, and as soon as I moved it, it shifted in my hands and toppled over, scattering its contents across the floor. Papers went flying, shoes rolled under furniture, and I swear I saw the alive looking thing crawl toward me like it knew I was vulnerable. She was standing there, calm as ever, giving me that serene smile that said, "You've got this," even though everyone could see I clearly did not. That smile alone is part of the trap. It makes you think you're capable, lulls you into overconfidence, and then lets chaos slowly seep into every corner of your effort. As I bent down to collect the first shoe, I realized there was a second layer of chaos waiting in the next box, and a third, and then a fourth. Ending Russian nesting doll of problems disguised as helping. Every time I thought I was making progress, there was another box, another layer of mystery items, another opportunity to question all the life decisions that led me to this moment. She then suggested, almost casually, that I could also start checking the kitchen while I handle the laundry. Casual, that's the word that hooks you and drags you into it deeper. In her world, casual is catastrophic. The kitchen task seemed simple until I realized that the dishes weren't clean. The leftovers were strategically hiding under other leftovers. The plate I picked up decided it wanted to test gravity like it was auditioning for a stunt movie. I dropped it. She didn't react, which of course made everything worse because now I was panicking internally, apologizing to plates, imagining how the story would be told if someone were narrating my downfall in slow motion. At that moment, I understood the true danger of the word small in marriage. It's never a small task. It's a layered, escalating, meticulously disguised test of patience, agility, and humility. And yet, even as I stood there wiping my sweat, glancing at the next box with growing dread, I felt a strange pull to keep going. Because that's how the trap works. It's small enough to feel like help, but dangerous enough that once you start, there's no turning back. The comedy of errors is only just beginning, waiting to unfold in the most unexpected ways imaginable. Once I realized that the small project was anything but small, the real fun began with the physical side of helping. There's something uniquely humbling about thinking you can move a box and then the box moves you instead. I reached for one. As soon as I lifted it, it shifted like it had a mind of its own. Suddenly, papers were flying, a shoe hit me in the leg, some other unidentifiable object launched into the air, spinning like it was auditioning for a circus act. I stood there, stunned, holding a box that clearly weighed more than I did, while my wife calmly watched, probably thinking, this is exactly why I asked for help. And that's when you realize that physical comedy is much more entertaining when someone else is in control of the situation. Then came the kitchen disaster. I thought I could redeem myself there, assuming the safe haven of dishes and soap might offer some respite. That was my first mistake. I picked up a plate with what I assumed was a normal portion of leftover pasta. Turned out that the pasta had developed its own plans. As I moved, it slid off the plate in slow motion, like it had a dramatic flair for life. I dropped the plate, narrowly missing my foot. The pasta landed in a perfect spiral on the floor. I don't know if it was gravity or comedy timing, but it was spectacular. My wife looked at me, smiled, and didn't say a word, letting the situation unfold as if it were the most normal thing in the world. That silence is the real trap in these moments because it forces you to narrate your own failure in real time, which, by the way, is way more embarrassing than anyone else laughing at you. By the time I moved on to folding laundry, I already realized that every object in the house was conspiring against me. Socks that refused to match, shirts that were apparently shrinking in protest, and a mysterious tangle of cords that seemed to have a personal vendetta. It's funny, in a tragic sort of way, how everyday objects suddenly take on personalities when you're stressed. A shoe isn't just a shoe, it's a weapon. A plate isn't just a plate, it's a projectile. And every box, every pile of clutter, every item that falls in slow motion becomes part of this ongoing narrative where I am both the hero and the punchline. The more I tried to control the chaos, the more it escalated. Shoes would appear where they didn't belong. Stray paper would stick to my shirt, making it look like I was wearing evidence of my failure. Even the cat, who had been watching this entire time with judgmental eyes, decided to participate by knocking over a cup of pens, sending them scattering across the floor. And through it all, my wife never lost her calm, making the absurdity of the situation even more intense. The humor, the real, comes from observing all of this and reacting in a slow, understated way while the chaos swirls around you. It's the ordinary turned extraordinary, the mundane elevated into comedy gold. The timing is everything. There's a special kind of comedy that comes from the contrast between two people experiencing the exact same situation in completely opposite ways. In this story, that contrast is my wife versus me. She has this incredible ability to remain calm in the face of absolute chaos. She watches as I juggle boxes, dodge flying shoes, and apologize to plates like I've committed some unthinkable crime. She's standing there smiling, sipping her coffee as if this is just a normal Tuesday. And that smile is deadly. It's not just a smile, it's a signal that I've completely underestimated the challenge, that whatever I'm feeling is irrelevant to the mission. Meanwhile, I am sweating, panicking, slowly realizing that every step I take might result in a catastrophe worthy of a slow motion replay. I pick up a box, it tips, I'm lunging to catch it, narrowly avoiding disaster. She says something calm like, "Oh, maybe just set it over there." And I realize she's referring to a spot that, in my calculations, involves climbing over a chair, balancing on a cord, and performing a minor gymnastics routine I didn't sign up for. Her calmness amplifies my panic. It's like a mirror. She's serenity incarnate, and I'm a disaster magnet walking around in slow motion. That contrast alone creates the tension and the comedy because every action I take is exaggerated by the normalcy she maintains. Then there's the kitchen scenario. I drop a plate of sliding pasta on the floor, muttering apologies under my breath. She looks at me and says, "It's fine, just clean it up. Just clean it up." As if it's that simple. As if I haven't just experienced what I can only describe as a minor episode of domestic warfare between me, the plate. Gravity, the way she stays calm, makes everything I do feel larger than life. And in true Nate Bargatze's style, the humor isn't in the event itself, it's in the understated reactions, the timing, and the contrast between her steady composure and my spiraling chaos. When I move on to folding laundry or trying to organize a shelf, the pattern continues. I'm sweating, muttering, negotiating with socks while she's standing nearby. As though she's a serene general observing a battle she knows I am destined to lose. She might casually toss me a towel and say, "Here, this will help." And in that moment, it feels like the universe is mocking me because every helpful gesture has the potential to become another trap. Her calmness is hypnotic, almost cruel. The way that it allows me to spiral further into panic without any interference, leaving the audience laughing at the slow motion catastrophe unfolding. Even the cat senses it. The cat is calm, like my wife, but also watches me like I am a clown auditioning for a role I didn't know I signed up for. Every time I make a sudden movement, the cat flinches, and somehow I become even more panicked. She notices this but doesn't say a word, maintaining that perfect, serene demeanor, which amplifies everything I do, making the chaos feel bigger and funnier. As I try to regain control, she adds another small, casual instruction, knowing that my panic will escalate further, creating a chain reaction of relatable, escalating, perfectly timed comedy moments. It all started when my wife asked me to help with this small task around the house. Right there is where the trap set itself. When she says small, it's the kind of word that should come with a warning label, like caution, may cause panic and regret. I nodded, pretending confidence, because saying no felt like admitting weakness, but deep down, I knew I was walking into one of those situations where your best intentions meet the harsh reality of underestimated chaos. She handed me the first box and said, "This one's easy." Easy. That's when I should have walked away, because nothing that comes out of her mouth that starts with easy is actually easy. That word is like a secret code for prepare yourself for slow, escalating disaster. I lifted the box, thinking it was a simple stack of old magazines or maybe some light dishes, immediately discovered that it had the density of a small boulder. I mean, physics had clearly conspired against me because the box moved as if it had its own agenda. Papers flew everywhere. A stray sock landed on my head like a crown of shame. Some mystery object slid across the floor like it was auditioning for a superhero movie. I bent down to pick it up, thinking I could regain control, only to realize that it was the first layer of a domino effect. Each box, each item, each small instruction she casually added carried the potential for a tiny apocalypse. That's the genius of the small task trap. It's never one thing. It's a slow, creeping avalanche disguised as helpfulness. She stood there calmly, smiling, with that look that says, "I trust you," which in reality translates to, "Watch how this unfolds." Her serenity was the perfect foil to my growing panic, because every time I thought I had mastered the situation, her calm gaze reminded me just how far off I was. It's a subtle psychological trick. I was doing everything wrong, yet her peaceful demeanor made it feel like the world was judging me for overreacting. It's hilarious in retrospect. In the moment, it's a pressure cooker of stress, minor accidents, and dry humor waiting to explode. Then came the casual addition of extra instructions, almost hidden in passing. "Oh, could you also tidy up the counter?" She said, as if I hadn't just been through a battle with boxes, papers, and mystery objects. That's when I realized the real skill of the small task trap isn't in the items themselves, it's in the layering. One tiny task becomes 5, each slightly more complicated, each more likely to end in disaster. And I'm stuck in the middle trying to prove that I am capable of handling a small thing without detonating the entire house in slow motion. The ordinary objects betray you. Shoes refuse to stay in pairs. Papers fold themselves into origami shapes of shame. Something that should be simple, like moving a box, becomes a full-body negotiation with gravity. You start to understand that in these moments, helping isn't about being useful. It's about surviving with dignity, which is often optional. And just when I think I might get a handle on it, there's always another small task lurking in the corner, waiting to test my patience, coordination, and sense of self-worth, like it's personally offended that I dared to think helping could be simple, just when I thought the chaos was under control. My wife casually added another task, and that's when I realized the true genius of domestic escalation. It starts with one small thing, a box, a dish, a towel, and somehow, like some sneaky magician, she multiplies the responsibilities without any warning. I had barely finished apologizing to the floor for dropping one plate when she said, "Oh, could you also tidy up the living room?" Now I'm standing there looking around at the couch cushions that seem to have been designed specifically to trap lost socks, coffee tables stacked with magazines in a way that violates the laws of physics, at the faint suspicion that some of the throw pillows might be sentient. My brain is screaming, "You said small task, you said helping," but my mouth just nodded, because that's what you do when escalation hits. You nod and pray for mercy. She adds laundry into the mix. Laundry, I'm juggling boxes, tidying floors, now sorting colors like I'm auditioning for some secret test in textile engineering. Whites, darks, delicates, everything is a puzzle, and every sock that refuses to match feels like a personal attack. I'm balancing laundry baskets, trying to fold shirts without creating origami disasters. Smart, and thinking about the absurdity of a life where folding clothes could feel like high stakes training for a professional stunt team. The audience knows what's coming before I do, which makes the humor even more intense because they see the inevitability. The perfect storm forming around me, fueled by my good intentions and complete lack of preparedness. Then comes the kitchen again, because apparently tidying the living room and laundry wasn't enough. I step in, maybe I can conquer this zone like a competent adult, but I soon discover that every dish has a hidden agenda. Plates stacked with leftovers, utensils tangled in ways that defy logic, and a cup of coffee teetering on the edge of the counter, like it's auditioning for an action movie. I try to steady it. Naturally, the cup slides, spilling its contents in a perfect diagonal across the countertop. My heart races, my palms sweat, and I glance at my wife, who remains calm, sipping her coffee as if this is nothing. That calmness is part of the escalation. It's the silent multiplier that amplifies every mistake I make and every small disaster that I encounter. Then she casually mentions the garage, just as I'm beginning to think that surviving the house alone would be an accomplishment, the garage. That's when I realize the escalation isn't just about adding tasks, it's about layering them so that each one compounds the previous chaos, creating a rhythm of comedy that's both relatable and absurd. I try to negotiate with the boxes, negotiate with the dishes, negotiate with socks that clearly have minds of their own, and even negotiate with myself, convincing my brain that helping is still worth it. But the next instruction looms over me like a storm cloud, promising more unexpected hurdles, more subtle chaos, more moments where the audience can't help but laugh because they know the pattern will continue and the stakes will keep rising. One of the things that makes helping my wife both hilarious and terrifying is the sheer amount of dry, observational comedy that sneaks, and while you're in the middle of chaos, you don't notice it at first because you're too busy panicking over a tip box or a sliding plate. But once you pause for a second, the absurdity becomes undeniable. For example, socks. Socks are a perfect microcosm of disaster. They seem innocent enough, just little pieces of fabric, but the moment you try to pair them up or fold them neatly, they turn into rebellious little entities. One sock goes left, the other goes right, and suddenly you find yourself negotiating with inanimate objects like their temperamental roommates. And in that moment, you start noticing the world differently. The world of everyday items has rules, and apparently, you're failing every single one of them. Then there are dishes. On the surface, washing dishes is simple. But in this house, dishes are tactical obstacles. One plate might have a smear of spaghetti that seems harmless until it slides off in the most cinematic fashion imaginable. A fork may be perfectly balanced until you touch it, and suddenly it's a weapon. All of these little observations, how a coffee mug can teeter as if it has a mind of its own, how a sponge never seems to be in the same place twice, become rich fodder for humor. You realize that every ordinary item is absurd when it's interacting with your clumsy attempts to help. The comedy comes not from loud crashes or over-the-top reactions, but from the understated, slow-motion acknowledgement of how ridiculous it all is. Even the way the house is organized lends itself to dry humor. There are stacks of paper that no one has touched in years. They remain precariously arranged like some kind of office-themed Jenga. I try to move them, and immediately the laws of physics remind me that I am, in fact, not in charge. Every object seems to have a story, every item a purpose, and my attempts to intervene become a narrative of minor failures. You start noticing patterns in the chaos. The way the lamp cord always finds the one shoe that's just out of reach. The way the throw pillows accumulate in random corners. The way the cat stares judgingly from a high shelf, silently narrating your failures with its eyes. The humor deepens when you realize that all these small, ridiculous details are somehow connected. Socks that refuse to match lead to tripping hazards. Tripping hazards lead to dropping dishes. Dropping dishes leads to apologies that no one asked for, but you feel compelled to offer. And the dry, observational commentary is where the Nate Bargatze style really shines. You can describe these events with a calm, slow delivery, letting the audience fill in the drama, which makes it funnier than any overacted chaos. You notice how the broom never seems to sweep in a straight line, how the laundry always hides a missing sock that you'll never find, how the smallest, quietest item has the potential to ruin everything in the most elegant way possible. Suddenly the ordinary becomes absurdly hilarious. And the best part is, no matter how many mistakes I make, I can always find another layer of humor in noticing them. The tension of trying to be helpful meets the joy of recognizing the absurdity, creating a perfect playground for slow, dry, relatable jokes that feel effortless but are secretly meticulously observed. It's like the universe is conspiring to give you material, and all you have to do is survive long enough to notice it. By the time I reached the point where I could see the floor again, had successfully moved half a dozen boxes without sustaining permanent injury, realized that the so-called helping had transformed into a full-scale investigation into my own lack of foresight. It's amazing how one small task can spiral into a multi-level expedition of chaos, and yet through it all, there's a certain clarity that creeps in. An understanding that maybe some things are better observed than done. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by a pile of items that I didn't know existed 5 minutes ago. And it hit me. My good intentions had been weaponized by the very definition of small task. Each move, each attempt to improve the situation only revealed another layer of complexity that I hadn't even considered. That's the beauty of the open-ended realization. The audience can see it coming before you do. The humor is heightened by anticipation. I looked around at the slightly askew throw pillows, the precarious stack of magazines, the half-folded laundry, and the lingering scent of pasta that had chosen the floor as its permanent residence. And I understood that helping isn't just about effort. It's about managing expectations in an environment where logic and gravity have been suspended. Every object, every small instruction, every glance from my wife, calm, unshaken, was a subtle reminder that the chaos wasn't a failure, was an inevitability, and maybe, just maybe, that inevitability was the joke. The realization expanded as I noticed the subtleties in the reactions of everyone involved. My wife, calm as ever, had this almost imperceptible grin, the kind that says, "You're learning, slowly but surely, that some things are beyond control." Even the cat, which had been judging my every move from atop the bookshelf, seemed to nod in quiet approval of the chaos I had navigated. And I started to see patterns in the disorder. The mismatched socks were not just a nuisance, they were a metaphor. The sliding pasta was not just a kitchen accident, it was a life lesson. And in the quiet moments, when the house finally settled for half a second, I realized that the story didn't need a punchline, because the narrative itself, the journey through escalating tasks, unexpected disasters, understated humor, was enough to keep the audience laughing, hooked, and guessing what might happen next. Every new task, every casual suggestion from my wife, every seemingly innocent box of stuff waiting to be moved, a narrative thread that could spiral into chaos at any moment. That's the brilliance of the open-ended style. There's always more coming. The humor comes from anticipation, from observing the inevitability of the next disaster, and from the slow, deliberate way I react to it. Each step forward isn't just progress, it's another opportunity for the audience to laugh, relate, wonder how far this helping will go before it reaches absolute absurdity. And as I stand there, catching my breath and preparing for whatever small, impossible task might appear next, it's clear that the story isn't over. It's just paused, and the suspense, the humor, the relatability keep building with every silent, loaded glance, every mischievous smile, every small step into the next layer of domestic comedy. And in the end, realize that helping my wife isn't about doing things right. It's about surviving long enough to see the next disaster. It's about learning that small tasks are rarely small, that socks have minds of their own, and that calm smiles can be more terrifying than flying plates. I walked away that day a little wiser, a little humbler, a little more convinced that sometimes the best way to help is to watch, cheer, and if possible, keep the cat out of it. As I sit here telling you this story, I can't help but think maybe the next time she asks for help, I'll just offer moral support from the couch.